How's everybody doing today? Give me a one in the chat if you can hear me. I'm trying to get used to this new restream, but I think it's getting better, getting better. So get my big old head out of the way. Hopefully everybody's doing okay today. Give me a one in the chat if you can hear me. About to get started. I always struggle streaming. Once again, Restream's got a new way of loading PowerPoint, so it's kind of something for me to get used to. Not a bad day. TGIF. Hopefully everybody's doing okay. Checking my phone real quick, make sure ain't nobody looking. You know how we do it. If we got any shots, appreciate you, Jeffrey Johnson. You know how we do it. If you got any questions, cybersecurity or tech, just drop them in the chat. Heart of bereavement, appreciate that. Uh, Once again, if you got any questions, let's go. Let's see. Everybody know I'm a NIST 800 guy, so that's usually what I focus on. There's a 20 families of NIST 800-53. I usually show that every every stream. So this is actually part of the kind of threat analysis, vendor assessment, risk assessment, uh, lunch and learn on Friday. So that's kind of what I'm focusing on. 2.41 trillion coming from poor quality software. Part of that is data breaches, operational failures, unsuccessful development projects, and the other part of that is risk assessment. So I get this question. I wouldn't say a lot, but a lot of people ask me, can they use their personal equipment to do federal work? Uh, the straight off the top of the head is no, but there's some things we can do for compensated controls, risk assessment. So we're actually going to kind of talk about that. Let's see. Sorry, my bad. I was using my next YouTube account. What's going on, Marvin? No worries, no worries. It's all good. It's all good. Oh, I guess I should have did a better job of talking about that. So actually, what is this? This is AWS thin client. So if you see that little box, that's actually like a Google workspace. That's Amazon version of that. So with those two monitors, you see their hub down there. You could hook it up to your router at home, and then you can use the virtual desktop in AWS. Shout out to Casual Economist. Appreciate you for joining me. So that's kind of what I recommend if people ask you to use your personal equipment. You would just use a virtual desktop, some similar to Citrix. Google's got their workspace. Azure's got their workspace. And of course, Amazon's got their workspace. I think all of those are valid options if somebody's talking about using your personal computer. So that's kind of what we're going to dig into. Some of the benefits of Amazon Workspace: simplified desktop, reduce costs, control of your desktop resources, keep your data secure, flexible desktop OS deployments, deliver desktop devices to multiple devices, centrally manage and scale your global deployment for that, and can use existing directories. Most people, and I got a slide later on coming. You can hook it to your company's Active Directory, and how would you do that and link that to AWS, right? To kind of make it seamless. So I'm gonna just kind of once again drill into that. Some benefits of workspace security: you can do Radius. That's when I was working at a couple big companies, we always had the Radius card. No company data on the device. All right, you're gonna keep it in the cloud. Encrypted data volumes, encrypted pixel streamings if you want to stream. So a lot of great security things coming from virtual desktops. Some of the best practices: you can right size your bundle, networking, image management, verify the run mode, and once again, directory services. So once again, one of my favorite things when I'm doing internal assessments or risk assessments, um, using a virtual desktop. If you have vendors coming in and you want to give them access to your system, I will give them access to a virtual desktop that you control. Right. So, NIST general position across multiple publication: NIST consistently treats personally owned devices as a high-end risk endpoint for handling organizational government information. So I put in there where personally owned devices as a high risk endpoint. Right? So that's why PBO most of the time blocks that. Right now, you can't use your personal equipment. Personal devices should not process, store, transmit organizational data unless strong controls, isolation, or authorization mechanism are in place. So that once again, that's NIST's general position on the subject. So let's look at some of the key references where that nomenclature is or that verbiage is in. NIST 800-124, guidance for managing security of mobile devices. Significant BYO devices. We're looking at the takeaway section. Introduce significant risk from a lack of enterprise visibility, inconsistent patching, and weak device configuration controls. NIST recommends manage mobile devices, MDM, strong authentication and encryption. 171, which is kind of based on CMC. Personally unmanaged systems are not acceptable for CUI, controlled and classified information, unless they meet all the equivalent baseline controls, device hardening, encryption monitoring, etc. The R5 on AC 19 and 20. These controls explicitly restrict or prohibit use of personally owned devices unless specifically authorized or managed. Organization must define usage term and policy, enforce configuration access control, apply encryption and remote wipe, and monitor for compliance. Then 846 got enterprise telework. BYD can increase attack surfaces, malware, data exfiltration, lost and stolen devices, and blurred data ownerships. Recommend using what we're talking about BDI, containerization, or separate user accounts for isolation. So then people always ask me why I can't use my personal device. These are the reasons why, right here. So. Once again, just kind of reiterating what we just read. Why is BOD bad from a NIST risk perspective? Loss of control and visibility, data spillage, device loss and theft, shadow IT and compliance violation, and untrusted networks. Right. So if you see 4 down, fails, FISMA, FedRAMP, IRS Pub 1075, CGIS, HIPAA, or GLIBA requirements for system boundary protection. Right, so those are all the first 4 is what I do in real life. Right, I've done FISMA, FedRAMP, IRS Pub 1075, and CGIS. Right, all those are federal agencies that basically said BYOD is a bad thing. Right, unless you saw that one, unless it's VDI. Right, because when you do VDI, it actually puts your personal laptop or device in the sandbox, and all your control is really coming out the cloud. So, once again, if you got any questions or cybersecurity or tech, just put them in the chat. NIST align if BYOD is unavoidable. Formal authentication, personal device must be explicitly approved by authoring official, your AIO. Mobile device management, 800-124, enforce policies, PIN encryption, app whitelisting, isolation, secure containers. The second one is what we're really talking about, virtual desktop, VDI. Browser isolation is separate corporate data. Network segmentation, a la zero trust. Require VPN with multi-factor authentication. Log mobile device activity, detect jailbreak and rooting, and revoke non-compliant devices. Really, that's part of zero trust. So when you log in with a device, laptop, workstation, we're checking what's the health of your machine. Are your OSs patched up into a certain level? Are you using the proper system defender, the proper encryption, right? All that's part of the health of your machine. Policy enforcement, document BYOD restrictions in the system security plan and the AUP acceptable use policy. So usually we have one line in there. You can't use your own device. Then big, they don't even want you to use your phone. They actually want you to use a corporate phone. So once again, BYOD is inherently insecure. Treat personal device as an untrusted unless fully managed and controlled. Authorization required must be formally approved, not implied by convenience. Isolate, isolate, isolation, isolation. User container, VDI, or gateway to prevent direct data exposure. Once again, we're going to talk about AWS Workspace as part of that VDI infrastructure. Shout out to my man Equalizer. Easiest way to meet NIST FedRAMP baseline, right? Prefer corporate devices, right? Especially you're talking about CMCs, the hot compliance, but any federal compliance, they really want you to use a corporate device. I forgot to make a slide from it. So when I worked for DOD or the state, they gave me their equipment, right? Like I really worked for them. I worked for one company. They were doing all the, and we saw that in there. They were doing all the IRS hardening. So I was using corporate equipment with the same equivalent from a FedRAMP and NIST perspective. They were using the same controls. And the third thing probably would be VDI. Right, use VDI to log in the system. Then the fourth thing would be me trying to use my personal equipment. I would never do that. I've been thinking about that. Let me rewind that. If you pay me a lot of money, I might risk it. If you just talking about paying me, I probably wouldn't do it. Um, the odds of it coming back on me is small, but it's just to me that tells me your company's not mature enough to understand the federal requirements being put upon them, right? So that's a telling tale for me. All right, I'm an old curmudgeon too, so in short, NIST does not outright ban BYOD, but under the NIST RMF and 800 family, it's considered a major risk requiring explicit authorization, compensating controls, and continuous monitoring. So one of my good YouTube buddies reached out and gave me a call. So we were kind of walking through the steps of what that would look like for him. Um, I didn't recommend it, but if he wanted to, I told him these. I probably need to send him this video. But major risk requiring explicit authorization. So basically, people know I send him the STIG checks. This is the STIGs for your Defender. This is the STIGs for your virus protection. This is the STIGs for your Windows 11, right? To give you the same security that they're doing. Once again, the IRS, FedRAMP, HIPAA, High Trust, CGIS, right? So what are their hardening requirements? Then point 7 actually comes out the IRS Pub 1075, which is their NIST 800-53 requirements. Virtual desktop provides user access resources, including virtual desktops from locations both internal and external to the agency. In a VDI environment, a user can access FTI connecting to a virtual workstation via a vendor-specific agent and the connecting to. And you see right there, I put in both. Using VDI environment is the only manner in which an agency may authorize their use to leverage personally owned devices and or manage information to process, receive, store, protect, or transmit FTI. FTI is federal tax information, so make sure everybody's level set. So you see there in both. Using FDI environment is the only manner in which agencies may authorize their users to leverage personally owned devices. Right now, that's specifically from the IRS, but most government agencies use the same type of requirements. So that's why I tell people I probably would, unless I was using VDI, I would never personally connect my machine to a FedRAMP or state network just on my protections on my PC. And I'm a security guy. I got pretty good protection, but for me, the risk, yeah, once again, the risk is super high on that. I need to send this video to my man once after that. Got me thinking. So once again, that's the setup. A good friend of mine is actually using it for Fortune 500 company they use to collect debt. So you see right there, that box is actually the thin client. Then you're gonna log into AWS. So we're gonna talk about once again securing AWS VDI. What will make it? What do you need to secure to do federal work? But that's the setup. And probably me and Chris been talking about this forever. From Study GRC, I probably labbed that because I think that was like $150, and I think it was like $10 a month to do video on AWS, and I just like that setup. So I probably do that as a lab. Order the box, set up the monitors, set it up once again at AWS and my tenant because I do a lot of lab in it. And what would that look like, right? And kind of get comfortable with using that VDI interface once again from the web. So. This is coming from the little website, managing security from the workspace. You see that centralized management, device managed service provides administration with complete view of their fleet, including inventory details, patch management, remote administration. No application or data can be downloaded. Hardware-based authentication. Workspace then client utilize secure on-chip secret to establish trust with the device. Right. So we've been talking about the health of your workstation. Now it's talking about, is that workstation authorized? Then two is the sessions on there authorized? Because bad guys get on laptops and PCs. So once again, the health of it. Then it's once again, it has an on-chip secret to say this actually the device that's able to connect to our AWS client. Right. So we talking about securing you by doing username and password, but a bad guy could take your passwords. Are they logging in from a system that's authorized to connect to your AWS tenant or infrastructure? And specifically, what it's on chip. So if somebody gets your username and password, if that chip's not signaling this the right device, it won't let them in. Right. So once again, different level of security, trying to make sure we're secure, doing the right thing. At a high level, you got the workspace. You can do some analysis. And when I used to go out and look at Fortune 500 companies, I probably would say the top ones actually, when I came to do a risk assessment on their stuff, they would give me their virtual desktop. So I would do all my work on their virtual desktop, take my spreadsheets, and they would actually let me send them into a Teams area inside their company. Right? I couldn't bring it back. I think there was one sheet where we did a summary that kind of rolled everything up. They would let us email that back to us after we scan it, but all the calculations and findings would stay on their VDI, their workspace. It took me a while to get used to it, but I thought that was great security. This is just kind of overview at a high level. I really like this because I think in 2026, we always talk about multi-cloud security. So you see at the bottom left in orange, the workspace, but we're actually using Azure, Intune, Identity, and AFDS. So my credentials being Azure, I would log in my workspace, connect to the Azure, validate me on their on-prem stuff, then it will let me in AWS. So I kind of like that multi-cloud infrastructure. So we're using AWS services, but we're using Azure, Intra ID, Intune, and Identity platform to do the authentication and authorization to let us into AWS, because you don't really want to duplicate your passwords all over there. You have them in one spot, then you would just use that. So once again, that multi-cloud, I kind of like that. Once again, you see it. You got their on-prem. They got their on-prem Active Directory. You just sync it with your Microsoft Active Directory inside AWS. Then you use those credentials to log into your workspace. So once again, your credentials on-prem. You use the trusted Active Directory in AWS. They have a connector, so you just connect it to their on-prem. All that secure. You see that VPN connection. We want to make sure we're doing the right thing. Once again, you're using your on-prem credentials, roles, and groups to log into your AWS. Once again, I like that as a multi-cloud. That might be one of my first multi-cloud labs I create. And I think a lot of times as GRC, we never talk about it at the enterprise level of security. Now we might talk about it like, okay, the workspace is logging into some tax service, but we never talk about this connection before we start drilling down into the apps. AWS workspaces, their managed desktop as a service, provides each user with persistent Windows or Linux virtual desktop in their VPC. RMF NIST speaks on a system component providing user endpoint functionality like laptops, operating inside the organizational system boundaries, managed through AWS Directory Service. We were kind of looking at that picture before. You can do the AD connectors or the AWS Managed AD, covered under the AWS FIPS FedRAMP moderate high authorization for GovCloud USA. So I was on a project for a minute, probably 4 or 5 months. They were talking about using the client. Their data was moderate, but they wanted to do high checks and high authorization. So my manager was kind of like trying to figure out the best way. I just told them, hey, if they want to do high, that's up to them, right? It's their data custodians on their data, but we got to charge them, right? Because now there's certain things you need to do FedRAMP high that you can't, that doing moderate stuff won't work, right? So understanding moderate versus high and kind of what's the difference and when you need to do which versus the other. So, but once again, we looked at that. Like this talked about AWS Directory Service, AD connectors, or AWS Manager. Let's see. That's it right there. The Microsoft AD directory. I think that's the connector. Using it in workspace. Once again, all that's super secure. Gotta have your VPN right there in there. Make sure that traffic is encrypted. So these are some high level baselines, just matching them back to the AWS workspace. So those are the NIST families. Once again, we just talked about that. Access control, AWS managed, Microsoft Active Directory or on-prem. We just looked at that particular architecture diagram. Enforce MFA with using Amazon Web Apps. We talked about that. Access 19 and 20. Restrict access to corporate-owned devices via IP groups. We were just talking about that. Making sure you use corporate-owned equipment. All right. So there's a difference between agency-owned equipment, corporate-owned equipment, and your personal equipment. Right? So what does that what does that mean? And boundary protections. You got your network apples inside security groups. You got your net gateways and also your private subnets. Right. Really, that's part of zero trust. You want to get your micro segmentation in there and kind of keep that rolling. Let's see. TLS 1.2 in there for your SC cryptography protection. Enable Amazon CloudWatch and Cloud Trail for your logging. Oh, I appreciate that. I appreciate that, Dr. Abdul. Nuclear cybersecurity program. That's on a different level. I appreciate it. So configuration management, once again, using your Amazon workspace. But everybody knows I'm an AWS guy, but In reality, you can do Google Workspace has most of those controls, and Azure has most of those controls. Right? We like to focus on the workspace. Configured centralized logging, security hub, or guard duty. Everything you can do on AWS, you can map to Azure and Google, right? And Rackspace and Oracle OCI's gaining momentum, and Salesforce has a lot of that. So once again, check that out. But once again, we're talking about BYOD, bringing your own device. If you're gonna do that, you got to go through a VDI, right? Once again, I'm a AWS guy, so I usually map it to AWS resources. So I dropped the link if anybody wants to come up and chit chat. Wrapping it down a couple things: identity and access management, and how you would do it. And we just really went over there, and those are the AWS services over there. Let me get my big head out the way. Audit managers, inspector, workspace, client privacy, cloud trail, config, guard duty. And tools, if you look through my thing, and we're going to do that more, start labbing these particular services so we're comfortable with it, and how we make that, once again, to do federal work, right? People know that's how I make my living. AWS config, that's actually the compliance service inside AWS. You can put these things inside JSON at the bottom. This config rules will ensure all deployed workspaces meet encryptions and network policy requirements. I'm a little confused about that. It says encrypted, right? But what encryption? AWS KMS. You can do DES, AWS. It doesn't. It does that means it fits 140-2, 140-3. There's a lot of encryption that goes with that. So I might need to shoot AWS some questions about, okay, encrypted into what? Because a lot of times you can encrypt like an S3 bucket, but then you can use the KMS keys. You can pick your own keys. You can import your own key material. So when they said encryption, I'm a little confused about that. And once again, as a student of GRC working on your craft, you want to know the difference between the different levels of encryption. And some encryption will not be certified for federal work. FedRAMP and NIST and Sieges and IRS Pub 1075. They want FIPS 142 encryption encrypted modules, meaning basically it was approved by the government. That's just a fancy word where you send it to the government. And see, that's my question here. Right? I pulled this out of the NIST doc. Authentication traffic must be encrypted using the latest FIPS, which is FIPS 140-3 validated cryptographic module. A product does not meet the FIPS 142 requirement by simply being approved security function. And I think a lot of people miss that. A lot of senior people miss that from a cybersecurity risk assessment standpoint, right? So that's kind of the part that we want to make sure we understand at certain levels, right? That's my multi-cloud, right? You log in AWS, you go to Azure ADFS Intune, enter ID to get your credentials, grabs your ticket, then it lets you get into AWS, and Security Manager has your password where you should log in at from, and if you have admin rights. So let's say we want to hit a few things once again. And I really like that setup. I think that's what I'm gonna buy. PBO is gonna buy itself for Christmas, right? He's gonna get a thin client with the cube. That's your hub right there. You hook your monitors to and hook that to your router. PBO's got the great router, right? Top of the line. So hook that into there. Then we use that thin client to connect to AWS workspace. Then we up and running, right? We got our screens. We can run Windows or Linux. Let's say I work for a big company, and all our client service people ran this. So yeah, I think that's what PBL will get itself for Christmas. Once again, BDI, you see right there in bold. I pulled that from the IRS Pub 1075, which sits on top of NIST 800-53. Using VDI is the only manner in which an agency may authorize their users to leverage personally owned devices. They didn't stutter. They didn't say maybe, right? Now, at the top, it says that NIST doesn't outright ban BYOD, but the IRS does. The 3.37 comes from, most people know, I do most of my FedRAMP and IRS companies, IRS operations, people doing IRS work. I've been doing that shit for 20 years, so I know it inside and out. So when people say stuff, I go to the actual Pub 1075 document. To me, that's the legal requirements. So they tell you what you can and can't do. Is the only manner, right? So I sent that to one of my bosses one time. They like, oh, the company we're using said we could do that. People know this is my favorite saying. That is incorrect. That is incorrect. You cannot be just letting people use their home computer. That is incorrect. All right. So once again, I think that VDI is it. VDI is the top. I think we'll recommend it. I think that's all I got. If anybody wants to come up, I'll drop the link. I'll hang out any if anybody has any questions. Shout out to Study GRC. They told me I need to stop making 2-hour presentations. Shout out to them. I appreciate. Oh, that's cool. I appreciate security expert. Thanks for joining me. Equalizer. Really good. I appreciate it. Let's see. Is there anything else I want to hit? But yeah, that once again, I pulled this, and you've seen it out there. I usually do presentations, run through Chat GPT, get Chat GPT's input on stuff. But once again, I've been doing this forever, and we saw that in the IRS Pub. Uh, personally owned devices pose a high risk endpoint to handling organizational government information. Personal devices should not process, store, transmit organizational data. All right. So, and that's the big thing, especially with the IRS. Once again, and usually we get our MFA, how we're going to do our MFA technique. Usually I use the Raiders card when I work for the big company because they want you to do things you know, then they have the number moving and you put them together. So that's something you know, something you have, right? So you really almost at 3-factor. Why do I say 3-factor? Usually got to log in with your password to get in. Then once you try to get into that particular service, it asks you for your radius. So part of the radius, they got a code, then they got the numbers moving. So really, that's a 3-factor authentication. So big fan of that. Big fan of that. Let's see. Yeah, once again, the benefits. And once again, Azure's got their VDI workspace. Google's got their VDI workspace. Oracle has theirs, and I'm pretty sure Salesforce has theirs. Right. So once again, there's a lot of different VDIs you can use. Some are more expensive, some are cheaper. Some's got a little better security than the other. That too, though, for the encryption, though, I like to do. We talked about that FIPS 140 top model, which is 3. Right. Basically, the government looked at the encryption and it's doing what it's supposed to do. A lot of people say, "Well, I'm using this encryption. Where did you get it from? Who's making sure it's patched? Who's doing peer review over that encryption?" Right. So, but if you want to do that encryption at a high level, you can use OpenSSL. It's a hard thing to get it to compile, but a lot of people use that. They have the FIPS module on OpenSSL. We used to use that in DoD for some of our Apache stuff. So that's definitely it. But once again, that's the open workspace with the thin client. A lot of times when people reach out to me and ask me about their company or if they're doing startups and if they have different organizations or different people doing client server, client help type stuff, I tell them that's the setup. And 2, it's cheap. It's cheap. Like I said, I think it's $150 or 200. You get the 2 monitors. I think once you get in a workspace, I mean, shout out to Study GRC. I think we looked at it last night. It was $8 a month, depending on the level. So even if you get to $10, I think you win it. And the security level you get, right? It's FedRAMP approved, STIG approved, DoD approved, CMMC approved, right? So it it covers up a lot of issues, right? And especially if you're a small company trying to get into federal work, I think that's definitely the setup to use, right? And then two is, even though you have remote workers, since they logging into the VDI, the virtual desktop interface in AWS, you control that. So really, those are corporate assets now, right? Because once they get into their PC sandbox, they can't download anything. They can't really, unless you let them, right? So usually we block. You can't download programs or data. So really, your sandbox. So really, the workspace is your corporate inventory, and you managed it. So when people come on, especially when you're doing CMMC FedRAMP, first thing, how are you doing inventory? How are you patching it? How do you keep track of when you log on? Zero trust. Right? So if somebody's workspace is not being updated, or they don't have the proper OS, or the OS, you can control that because you're the admin of that workspace. So once again, that covers a lot of your government compliance stuff. That's what PBO lives for. That's how PBO makes his living, right? Doing different federal requirements. So once again, I'm gonna hang out if anybody has any questions. PBO ain't checked his email, so if you email me, give me a couple days. I've just been out of sorts lately, trying to get it going, trying to get back, just rolling. So once again, you can easily find me on here. I try to live stream Fridays at noon, lunch and learn, really talking about risk assessment, vendor assessment. And so this is part of that assessment, because if any vendors talk about, yeah, our people are using our personal equipment to log in or do work for you. Oh no, no contract for you. You are blocked. You get a negative grade on the grading rubrics. Right. So I work with smaller companies. They're trying to present in federal agencies. Sometimes they have to present and they get hit with hard questions. So one of the questions is, how are you handling that? Right. So VDI, desktop, and even if you're using corporate equipment, I still like my DBAs, my sysadmins to actually go through a virtual desktop. Why is that? A lot of times, even though people have corporate equipment, they're clicking on stuff. They're on the internet. They're going places they shouldn't be going half the time. Half the time, their kids could be on their corporate assets. So with me forcing them to go to BDI, I can control everything, what they can do, what what things can download. Because on that, I'm not letting control applications they download, so you automatically get a whitelist. So if malware comes in there and try to download on my workspace, I'm going to block it because it won't be authorized for them to download any apps that aren't already on their application. Right. So now sometimes they say, well, we need to download something. Okay, that's fine. You let the workspace or admin know, he can go get all that and push that out there for you. Right. So if you need certain scripts, certain runs, certain Java, certain XML, we just have the admin push it over to your desktop. And if you're working with a team, the team needs to have those resources in there. So a lot of people, my admins complain when I do that, but we in control. But no, so really I like to, even though they have corporate equipment, I like my high risk people really to be go through VDI because we have better control. What's my high risk people? My sysadmins, right? You installing Linux or Windows, if a hacker gets your account, we're toast, right? My DBA, especially my database administrators, right? They're building data, they got access to all the data. The data's raw, they can export it and take it all home. All right. So people with high admin privileges, I try to push them through a VDI desktop, right? And in the old days, that used to be Citrix, right? Citrix got a lot better over the last 5 years. I wouldn't use Citrix 15 years ago. I blocked it probably like 5 times. But now it seems to be a lot better. But at the top, we're really talking about BYOD, bringing your own device, which we frown upon. But if we're gonna do it, we're gonna put it into a virtual desktop. Amazon Workspace is our one of choice, but in there too is once again Google, Azure. Everybody has their workspace. So that's it. Once again, put any questions in the chat. I'll drop the link down if anybody wants to come up. PBO is a super nice guy. don't feel intimidated. No, I've been in this game a long time. But once again, just talking about, I've got that question probably 4 times in the last month about people using their own devices. So I just kind of wanted to comment on that. Just come from my perspective. And two, I don't know everything. There's a lot of people better than me. There might be other resources. Just kind of in this industry, once again, that federal compliance industry, and once again, when you have to get an ATO authority to operate, what does that process look like when you're trying to get it? So once again, I'm hanging on a little bit. Drop your questions, cybersecurity or information chat in the box. I want to appreciate everybody joining me. Trying to make this stick. I think this is my third or fourth one. So trying to make the lunch and learn stick. Shout out to Jeffrey Johnson. Shout out to Heart of Bereavement, aka Marvin. He came in with the other one. Shout out to Casual Economist. Definitely one of the day ones. When I had like 200 subs, probably. Ooh, I haven't realized. I've been on YouTube for 6 years, about good 5+ years. So PBO slowly but surely. He ain't leaving. A lot of people give up. Shout out to my man, Dr. Abdullah AI, for joining me. Give me a little shout out with my little presentation. So I want to make sure we stay true. Security expert, always joining. Let's see what Jeffrey Johnson said. I usually warn users if they decide to use their equipment for assessing corporate resources. No, facts 100%. No, that is true. A lot of times, especially on the phones, I just a lot of you saw the federal, a lot of federal work. They don't want you to do it. Period. But now you are correct. Even if they do it, you can actually remote wipe it. Um, I always get nervous. Is by the time we figured out it needs to be wiped, they done got on the box. They done escalated their privileges. They going east and west. They done stole all the corporate data. So, but no, I do see that a lot, especially with phones. I see that a lot with phones. I don't even like to, and people get mad at me. I do not log in to corporate information with my personal phone. I've gotten into places where people want to fire me. It's just something. It's a small thing, but if my phone has a virus and I infect it and you trace it back to me, I don't want none of that smoke, man. If you want me to use my phone in a corporate, just give me a corporate phone. So that's kind of my issue. I had that with a smaller company. So they after a while they kind of left me alone because now I don't do as much, not as much. I don't do any admin work, right? I'm doing GRC. I'm reading your scans. I'm not setting up the scans, the Rapid 7 or the Nexus or the Qualsys scans come out. I just go get them and download them and just look at them, right? Okay, these are the things we need to fix. I try to put them in a poem and work with the cloud teams, the infrastructure teams, and the DBA teams. When can we fix these findings of things that are out of scope now, right? Somehow encryption got taken off, or half the time, a lot of times is patch Tuesday came and we mixing a couple security patches. Somebody didn't apply them, or we applied them and it broke some, and we got to roll it back. But now we have a vulnerability, aka what the Qualsys scan. Oh, 100%. That was in there. You correct, doctor. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, you got to log anything, even though I would block BMYOD, but if you connected, yeah, you got to log it. I think that was in, yeah, it was in, yeah, you're 100% right. When I say logging, I just make an assumption that's going to the SIM. But no, you are correct, doctor. Let's see, that was in continuous. There it is. Continuous monitoring CA7 log mobile device activity, detect rooting and revoke non-compliant devices if BYD is avoidable. Even though it says mobile, for me that's PC or anything not in the office, right? Is mobile. So no, you 100% correct, doctor. We're gonna log, and anytime we log everything, it's gonna flow to the seal. Let's see if that was in. I think that was in another place too. But no, yeah, logging's definitely in there. So that showed the logs. Let's see if there was logging somewhere else. But no, logs are definitely in there. But no, 100% correct. And when we say sim, we talk one sim all in one place so you can actually trace as that packet comes to your organization. Like I work for the big company, so I've used Splunk before, log analytics from Azure. Of course, if you're on AWS, you got your Cloud Trail and your Cloud Watch. Elk Cache is super hot. So some of the big dogs in logging, but now he's definitely anything. Let me roll that back. It's not anything on our network. We're logging, right? Because if you get hacked, you got to be able to trace it. So we got our corporate devices, agency devices, BYOD phones. You're in a database. As soon as you get in our network, right? If you're going through our Palo Alto, our Cisco routers, all that's logged. So we're logging everything because from a federal perspective, if you got hacked, you got to be able to trace it through your logs, right? And when we talk about SIM, we're pushing out of the devices because the bad guy's going to hack and get on that device. He's going to delete everything on there, so it's hard to track. So those logs are going to be pushed out, like the doctor said, to another SIM. Hopefully, one of the big dogs. So we got our KPIs on it. How many times somebody try to log on in a minute? If somebody try to log on 100 times in a minute, right? That's a brute force that's automated, right? That should show up in your log. So, but he's definitely 100% correct. So PBO is about to go get some lunch. He's trying to go on a diet, but once again, he's failing in 2025. Got to get his little work on his health a little bit. Once again, I would appreciate everybody for joining me. And you can easily reach out to me if you go on my YouTube channel. Go to the About page. Uh, my email is on there, professorblackops@gmail.com. He hasn't been doing a good job of looking at his email. Shout out to me in the third person. I got to do a better job of checking my email. I taught for 10 years at a community college. So the community college gives you 48 hours to answer your email. So that's what usually PBO's on that. So once again, I want to appreciate everybody for joining me. I'm out. Everybody has a happy Friday and a great weekend. I'm out. You can check me at Study GRC if you're looking for me. Have a great weekend.